Today's episode of the WAC podcast is brought to you by Hercules Tires, the official tire of the Western Athletic Conference. Now here are your hosts, Eric Danner and Rachel Vigil.
Welcome back to the WAC podcast. Eric Danner and Rachel Vigil here. We're now joined by Kyle McDonald, the editor-in-chief of WAC Hoops Digest. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this. I've kind of watched these podcast episodes, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you're a podcast. I mean, this is the first time we've had somebody with a fancy microphone like you have there. Tell us about how you got started with the WAC Hoops Digest, and you do a podcast, you have a website. Tell us about your product there.
So it really started, what do I want to say, 2 years. In 2016, I started a website called OneTeamAllGreen.com. It was going to be about Utah Valley athletics. I got to a point where I started doing a power rankings article in 2017-18, and I saw the traffic that I got from fans and fans outside of Utah Valley, of course. So I figured there's nobody that covers the WAC in depth. I mean, Greg Mitchell at Mid-Major Madness writes his weekly, article. There's feature articles written by beat writers for each school and so forth. I figured why not have one site dedicated to WAC hoops, kind of like, there's other sites dedicated to other conferences or other teams. And I ran with it and started that last fall, right before WAC Media Day. And I love it. I love the interactions I get with fans. I love the corrections sometimes I get on Twitter from fans, with information and so forth. And the opportunity to talk to coaches and players and, it's awesome, and I love it, and I love talking basketball, so it works out just fine.
I think we all know as content creators that sometimes it can be challenging, to find stories, to find leads and stuff like that. But Kyle, I will say you have done a phenomenal job of doing that. I hop on Twitter and sometimes I see you talking about a story and I'm like, okay, well, wait, where's this coming from? So what's your main source of trying to find all of these stories?
I think that's a good question, actually. I think it's about connecting with people and respecting, what they have to say, listening, paying attention. A lot of people don't do that. They just want to get the story out first. But if I get the, how do I want to say this? If I pay attention to what's going on, it leads to other things. And so it's just about confirming things with sources, with people around the WAC, and running with it rather than being the first person to get it out, even though it's not confirmed yet. So I don't want to be
Kyle McDonald from WAC Hoops Digest, their editor-in-chief. And Kyle, with podcasts, we started up the WAC podcast during the pandemic once we got shut down in March, and trying to figure out how to get content out to our fans and those kind of things. And this was a good way to do it, especially I live in Colorado Springs and Rachel lives in Denver. And now, right now we're in the office doing this, but you have a podcast as well. Was that some of the idea behind that as kind of I guess, to lack of a better term, an easy way to get the message to fans?
Sure, absolutely. It's always good to have audio where fans can hear what coaches are saying or what players are saying or what's being talked about, because a lot of times people don't want to read full articles. I mean, those are long, they take time, they're time consuming. This gives people a chance to hear what people have to say. And I think I love talking more than I love writing. It's easier, even though I'm not real good at it. I let the other people do the talking. So, but it's great because I get insiders. Like I had Paul Coro on the WAC Hoops Digest last night. Justin Martinez, the New Mexico State beat writer, the other day. I've interacted with coaches, and the nice thing is when they reiterate how they appreciate all I'm doing for the WAC and writing and covering them on a large basis. Those are what make it special to be able to do those kind of things.
What's been your favorite story that you've been able to tell?
I still think about WAC Media Day last year, when Lance Irvin was on the stage. And he had that quote, like it sticks with me all the time, where he said something to the effect of, if you're as good as you think you are, why not come play for me and win championships, at Chicago State? And he knows the struggle there. And so just to have that mindset that, like, this is what I want you to do when you're here, if you really think you're that good, it just sticks with me. And so that's one of my favorites. Yeah, I'll have to stick with that one.
We love Coach Irvin.
We do. We had Coach Irvin on last week, and he always puts a smile on your face every time you talk to him. Now, speaking of having a smile on your face, November 25th coming up. We're recording this on November 17th, so only 8 days away from the first day of college basketball. Date we circled a long time ago. I know a date you have circled as well, Kyle. Are there some matchups day one that you're looking most forward to seeing?
So there's two that stand out. UTRGV is at Texas, so that's a big opportunity for UTRGV to kind of make a statement. I don't know if they'll win that game, but the opportunity to play a Power 6 conference opponent with who they have coming back in Javon Levi, America East defensive player Jeff O'Cherry. I mean, that's an opportunity for them to show that they can play. The other one that I'm really, really interested in is Utah Valley at Stanford. Mark Madsen goes back to his hometown or his, alma mater, and his former coach, Mike Montgomery, is actually calling the game. So that'll be fun on the Pac-12 network. Plus, you have California Baptist at USC on the Pac-12 network that day as well. So there's some intriguing games there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And it'll be nice to see college basketball is back, to be honest with you.
I cannot wait for college basketball to be back. So I'm with you right there. Kyle, I mentioned earlier that I check Twitter and sometimes I see you breaking stories, and one of them was about New Mexico State possibly not playing in the state of New Mexico. What details do you have on if the Aggies are relocating or not?
So, interesting question. I was just told that there's going to be a press conference. Mario Mocha is going to have a press conference today at 3 p.m. to announce updates for that. The sources have told me that they're going to play on the GCU campus, but Justin Martinez says it wasn't confirmed yet whether they're going to play in Las Vegas or Phoenix. Could you imagine, though, having Grand Canyon and New Mexico State on the same campus for an entire season? I mean, but it has to be done because New Mexico State, is facing so many COVID restrictions in their home state with, the outbreaks and things like that, that has made it impossible to put a schedule together, made it impossible for them to practice. So, I mean, they had to do something, and we'll find out more at 3 p.m., this afternoon.
Yeah, Rachel and I were talking in our previous segment how the University of New Mexico also in that same boat as New Mexico State, and they're kind of isolated, those two schools, from basically the rest of the country because of the restrictions in New Mexico, and not faulting anybody. I mean, we're all trying to be as safe as we can with this deadly virus going around, but the New Mexico football team has already moved to Henderson, Nevada, because the Mountain West decided to play this fall, and I know that was one of the places being talked about for New Mexico State as well.
Yeah, I think, there was one thing I got a email from College AD. I follow that account and get their newsletter that New Mexico is paying $70,000 a week to stay in Las Vegas to play football right now. And the AD from New Mexico said that the money that they'll make from actually playing this season will help offset those costs. The problem with New Mexico State is there's not many Division I schools in the state of New Mexico like there is, say, in Utah or California or Arizona or Texas, where they can play an in-state schedule and not have any issues. So, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see possibly both schools in Las Vegas at some point playing basketball this year.
Oh, man, $70,000. And the football players, I can't even imagine. But, yeah, tough. Well, I want to hop back over to the basketball train real quick there. Trey Queen from New Mexico State. Possibility of being drafted on Wednesday night with the NBA draft. Kyle, what's your pick? Where do you think he'll land in the draft?
From everything that I've seen, I was researching this yesterday. Everything that I've seen, some people have him being late second round. Some people have him just being undrafted and signing somewhere. I hope to see him drafted in the second round somewhere. I don't think it'll be a first round pick, but either way, whoever gets Trey Queen, whether it's as a draft pick or as an undrafted free agent, they're going to get someone who's very athletic, can shoot the three, and can defend the perimeter. People don't give him enough credit, though, for his athleticism and his quickness and his ability to get to the rim. I mean, if you watch him, when he's on attack mode, he slices and dices a defense. Plus, he moves well without the ball. So, I mean, whoever gets him is getting a steal. I said the same thing about Leslie Varner from UTRGV, that whoever signs him to a professional contract is going to get a steal of a player, because there's just so much talent and ability there. It's sad that some things come down to small, little technical attributes that they pay attention to that could cause somebody to drop from the first round to the second round or not even be drafted. But Trev Queen's a winner too. I mean, somebody's going to take a chance and somebody's going to realize that they made a good investment.
Well, the last WAC draft pick we had was in 2016 with Pascal Siakam, and that turned out pretty well. And that was before Rachel and I were both with the WAC, and just talking to people around here who were here during that time, it was, I guess, a little bit of a surprise that he went in the first round. We had Mario Mocha on our podcast a few weeks back and asked about Pascal, and he thought he should have came back for another year because he left after his sophomore season. But you know, who knows?
I mean, working for him.
With Trev Queen, that he could, you know, maybe somebody has their eyes on him and maybe he does go first round or second round or undrafted. Milan Aqua, the other guy, WAC Player of the Year last season, left after his junior year to enter the NBA draft, one of 71 players that are available, underclassmen. You know, a lot of those guys, I think, just put their name on the list just so they can be on the list. But Milan, obviously WAC Player of the Year, would at least be on the radar of some teams. Have you heard anything about Milan potentially being drafted?
I haven't heard much about him. The most of the talk that I've seen has been about Trev Queen, obviously. I think Milan, he's a watching him, he's a true point guard that can score. But I don't know that he's going to be in the NBA. He may, be a G League guy, but if not, he may make more money going overseas and playing ball. But I can honestly say I haven't heard much talk about him in regards to being drafted on Wednesday night. Most mock drafts don't have him in their draft. So, I think he's either going to end up in the G League as an undrafted free agent, or he'll, go overseas and make a lot more money than he probably could here in the States.
All kind of on the same page there, I would say, with Milan. And again, hopefully Trev Queen can get drafted. We would love to see that name flash across the board there. But another look at basketball, too, is GCU new head coach under Bryce Drew. What have you noticed about the Lopes program so far that may be different than under Dan Marley?
GCU is going to have a lot of size. But let's be honest right now. I mean, they brought in 7-footer Asbjorn Midtgaard from Wichita State. They got Alessandro Lever at 6'11". Dima Zador was just granted a waiver. Found out that this morning, and he's at 6'10". Plus, Bryce Drew is really high on Gabe McLaughlin, who transferred in prior to last season. Even though at 6'7", he's not that tall-wise, but I've been told he plays bigger than what his height is. So they're going to have a lot of size inside that's going to make things a little bit more difficult to guard them. I like what he's going to do. I think it's going to be a different team because it's not going to be solely focused. There's not going to be that one guy that has the ball in his hands at the end of games like they have the last couple of years with Carlos Johnson or Dwayne Russell or Joshua Braun. I think it's going to be a little bit more team-oriented. And talking to Paul Coral, that's kind of what he saw. So I don't know that they're going to be able to get over the hump this year, but I think it's going to be, there's an opportunity there, especially with all the COVID-19 restrictions that New Mexico State's been dealing with, where they're not really prepared fully yet for the 2020-21 season. So, plus Bryce Drew is a Cubs fan, so I mean, I'm going to get along with him really well. I mean, I'm looking forward to that interaction with him as as this season goes along and as he gets more comfortable in Phoenix.
Yeah, I see you flying the W over your shoulder there.
My whole office all the walls are covered with Cubs, flags and signs and things like that. So huge Cubs fan, even though we got some bad news today that Theo Epstein is stepping down as the president of operations, and
breaking news.
yeah, so we'll see what happens.
And then Tyson Miller, pitcher who played at CBU, he played for the Cubs this year.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, players come up, and they develop some good, pitchers, but I don't know. They need to get younger with the pitching. So maybe, Tyson can be that youth movement that they need in Chicago.
Now, in addition to, Bryce Drew and some of the new coaches we have in the league, 2 new teams. We have Tarleton with Billy Gillespie making a big splash, big name head coach, and Dixie State right there in the state of Utah where you live. What are you looking for from our 2 new teams in the WAC?
Tarleton, when we were at WAC Media Days, what was it, 2 weeks ago, I loved what some of their players said. I mean, the one thing that sticks out to me is they're just hoopers that want to compete. I mean, that's a great mindset to have, especially if at the first season of Division I era. Plus, they play Gonzaga, Texas A&M, Kansas. I mean, and those are just 3 that I know about. I don't know who else is on their full schedule because they haven't released it yet, but Billy Gillespie isn't shying away from playing anyone in the first year. And, with his ties around the country and what he's done up to this point, I look forward to watching Tarleton grow. I don't know how successful they'll be in their first year, but the fact that he has a lot of guys he brought over from Ranger College, where he was last year, on his roster that are familiar with him, that says that they're comfortable with each other. They understand the system. They understand what they're trying to do. And I think they'll be successful throughout the season. John Judkins at Dixie, the guy is a winner. Plus, he's played and coached at every level of college basketball. He understands what's going on. He may have a chip on his shoulder because he's trying to, win more games than his brother who coaches the women's team at BYU. But I like that team because they returned 4 guys that played a lot of minutes last year. Frank Stain, the point guard, started every game for them last year. Dazen Youngblood is back. Hunter Schofield is back. And the big guy, I need to find his name now, Jared Green, who was on WAC Media Days,
right,
is back. So they have pieces in place from a team that won 20-plus games last year in the RMAC. So I look forward to those 2 teams. I think they're going to add more credibility to this conference as they go along. Plus, the Burns Arena down in St. George is probably one of the best venues in the WAC now, along with CBU, GCU Arena, and the Pan Am. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I think they're going to make this conference very, very competitive. I don't know if they'll have the same success in their first years as CBU did when it came in, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did either.
Another team with a lot of new faces is Utah Valley's men's basketball team. 17 new faces there. Kyle, what's one area that you think the Wolverines will improve with in this second season under Coach Batson?
So if you ask Brandon Crow, who's the play-by-play guy at Utah Valley, I texted him during games last year when he was calling him saying, Utah Valley needs to get out and transition more. Like I would send the word transition in full caps to him, and he would say it on the broadcast. Because last year when Utah Valley got out in transition, they were unstoppable. When they got in their half-court sets, the ball got stuck. Whether a player dribbling too much or not passing to an open, it was awful in the half-court. I think that changes this year because you have a team full of guys that aren't superstars, that are Madsen's guys now, that understand what he's trying to do. And now that he's in his second year, he sees what he did wrong or, changes he can make this year. I think it's going to be a more well-oiled machine because they really haven't had any hiccups with workouts and practices. And I think because it's his guys, it'll be a lot more interesting basketball that won't have the lulls that they had in 2019-20.
Well, Kyle, there was a lot of changes in WAC basketball during the offseason. We saw a lot of players transferring out, a lot of players transferring in. Isaiah White, one of those players who transferred out from Utah Valley to USC. Terrell Brown from Seattle U to Arizona. So both going to Power 5 schools, but then coming in, you mentioned Asbjorn Midgard from Wichita State going to GCU, and We saw the kid from UNLV starter last year that went to New Mexico State. So it's going to be a lot of new faces, especially early on, trying to figure out how each team's going to look this year, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, with the guys that come from Division I schools, I mean, at CBU you had Gorjak Gak, you have Elijah Thomas. You know, Gak came from Florida. Elijah Thomas came from St. Mary's. You know, they got Russell Barlow from TCU. Utah Valley has Evan Cole from Georgia Tech. I mean, there's Division I transfers, and I don't think there's going to be a lull for those guys because they understand how to compete at this level. They understand what's expected with workouts and being leaders and playing at a high level. I think it'll be interesting to see the JUCO guys. I know Utah Valley's full of them. You know, and there's some freshmen that I'm interested to see how they do this year. You know, Malik Wade at CBU, Tajon Sawyer down at CBU as well. You got Jaden Stone and Liam Lloyd at GCU. Lou, I want to say his name is Lou Haymuth. I hope I say that right, from Luxembourg at Chicago State.
Big Lou.
The big Lou, right. The 7-footer. I mean, you heard Lance Irvin in WAC Media Days how high he was on Big Lou, and so I want to see what they do. Seattle has 5 freshmen that they're very high on right now. I mean, it's exciting with that it's not – the conference isn't just full of Division I transfers or JUCO transfers. There's actually freshmen that are coming in and going to have an immediate impact on this conference this year. And we really haven't seen that in years past. I mean, 2 years ago, Wyatt Lowell won WAC Freshman of the Year, and he didn't even average 6 points a game. Last year, you had Javon Blackshear, who was really the only freshman that was playing significant minutes in the conference. This year, you're going to see a lot more freshmen that will have a choice to pick as WAC Freshman of the Year. And so I'm really excited about that opportunity. And, you know, it's going to be a fun conference this year.
All right, Kyle, I'm putting you on the spot. Break down what you think your standings are going to look like for men's basketball come the end of the season.
Oh my goodness! I was talking with Paul Coro about this the other day, or last night when we were talking. And there's such a right now, there's such a drastic gap between 3rd and 4th in this conference. I feel like that it's so hard to pick the rest of it. I know that. Oh goodness, this isn't fair, Rachel. I'm going to admit it's fair. I still think New Mexico State will end up on top. I just think with Jabari Rice, Clayton Henry, Johnny McCants, you know, adding Donnie Tillman to that mix, plus you got, you know, a couple of freshmen in Rashawn Agee, and there's the other one from what's his name, Marcus Watson, who was, you know, recruited by Oklahoma State. He'll be there. So I still think New Mexico State's there. GCU has the depth to compete. I don't know that they're going to knock them off, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did because of the depth that they have and the size that they have. I don't think they've had the size before to match up with the Aggies. UTRGV, I think with Javon Levi, Jeff O'Cherry, and the rest of that group, where he has probably the most experienced team, Blue Hill does, don't be surprised because they play helter-skelter and they can create problems for teams. Like, we've seen it before, and they can create problems. I think CBU fans and Utah Valley fans might not like me after this, but I think Seattle will be there at 4. I think, you know, then it comes to CBU and Utah Valley. I think Chicago State will still be down there at the bottom just because – no offense, Chicago State fans, it's just Chicago State right now, and they have to prove that, you know, they're better than they are. But the wild cards are Tarleton and Dixie. What do they do? You know, because CBU, I know when they came in 2 years ago, nobody really expected them to do what they did, and then they go and knock off New Mexico State in their first WAC game. So it's so hard. That's I'll go with the top 3 for sure, but the rest of it I can't say because there's a lot of question marks there. I will say this, so it's ironic that in Dixie State's first WAC game, they host New Mexico State at the Burns Arena, right? The last time New Mexico State played a first-year WAC program on the road, 2 open WAC season, was California Baptist, and we know what happened there. So I just want to say it's ironic. Plus, the Aggies don't get like 3-4 months of practice up to that point. So who's to say what could happen? I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, the thing is, that was the last time they lost in the WAC, was that CBU game 2 years ago. So it's been a long time, and I'm sure Chris James will remind his players. Johnny McCants was on that team. There might be a few other guys that were a part of it that I'm sure he'll put that in their minds. But the difference this year, Kyle, not only do they play them Friday night, they're going to play them again Saturday night. So that's going to be a different wrinkle on the WAC season this year.
I think it'll be fun to watch that because, you know, you have to play them back-to-back, obviously, but who makes the adjustments that are necessary to win that second night? Like, perhaps Dixie State loses by 30 on Friday night, comes back and beats the Aggies the next night. Like, it's all about making adjustments on the fly because you don't have the same kind of preparation, you know, around, or you don't have to travel. I think it's going to be a lot of fun because adjustments are what make or break a good team and a good coach. And I'm going to love watching that because there's so many variables at play in that regard.
It's going to be a fun season. I'm so excited for it to get started. Women's basketball, though, Kyle, I'm going to put you on the spot again. We know Utah Valley and CBU were picked by the coaches and media, but who are you picking?
Oh,
you can see the sweat coming down his forehead.
I want to say CBU just because the fact that they returned 3 starters plus WAC Player of the Year, Ene Oleata, or it's a preseason WAC Player of the Year, excuse me. I think Utah Valley has some depth. It's just a matter of, are they buying into what Dan Nielsen's cooking? Those 2 teams, I think, are above everyone else just because of what they have returning. New Mexico State has to answer, you know, who's going to step into Gia Pack's shoes. Same with Seattle, who's going to step into Kamira Sanders' shoes. UTRGV will be there because of Mark Graham. I like when we talk to her at WAC Media Days, I loved her mentality, and I think she's a great leader that will help UTRGV be there as well. So what Dan Nielsen and what Jared Olson said, both about there's parity in this conference, that preseason, you know, standings don't matter. I think that's very true on the women's side this year, and I think it'll be a lot more competitive than the men's side, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think 4 or 5 teams got first place votes in the coaches or media poll. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see. The New Mexico State, I was looking at that the other day where Gia Pack's gone, but 2 through 7 are back. So,
right.
You know, they're picked 4th, but Utah Valley, mentioned the depth, CBU getting Brittany Thomas back, and Ane Oleta, I probably mispronounced her name again.
Ane Olea, yes.
Preseason Player of the Year, and then Caitlin Harper back too. So they have some players back. So that'll be very interesting to see.
Think about the New Mexico State women just for 1 second, where 2 years ago they lost Brooke Solis.
Right.
Then they struggled with, you know, and then they struggled last year, not the kind of season that they're usually accustomed to. Maybe this year, by having a group of players instead of that 1 star player, Brooke Atkinson's team may surprise people and get back to that winning championship style team that they usually have.
And they did have to play that, about month and a half without Gia at the end of the year when she got hurt. So, yeah, some other players stepped up. Yep. So will be very interesting to see, Kyle. We want to thank you for taking some time out and visiting with us. Well, Rachel and I, like we've always said, can't wait for basketball to start.
It's going to be fun. I have my computer screen set up so that, you know, I can pull on the Pac-12 network and stream games on, you know, next Wednesday. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to create more fan interaction as we, you know, get going this season. It's fun that it's finally here. Hopefully, you know, it stays that way. Dan Rabbit, the NCAA senior VP, you know, said that games will start on November 25th, despite all the some of my media colleagues trying to push for conference-only games now with all the outbreaks, but it's good that there's it's been said they're going to start November 25th. So let's get it going and let's go have some fun.
Yeah, and no doubt there's going to be some hiccups here and there. We've seen that with football quite a bit this year. And Rachel's a bubble veteran, so she knows all about all the postponements and those kind of things as well.
Yep. I know what the Aggies are going to be looking forward to. So.
Well, thanks again, Kyle. When we come back, we're going to have Rachel's interviews with UTRGV head coach Lou Hill and Javon Levi, plus GCU women's coach Molly Miller and freshman Katie Scott. You're listening to the WAC Podcast.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And check out our website at wacsports.com.